Waka. Hello, I'm B. Nicole, and this is Buried on the Tundra. I wish to acknowledge that I record this podcast on the ancestral land of the Yupik-Chupik people. I acknowledge this is not only in thanks to the indigenous communities who have held relationships with the land for generations, but also in recognition of the historical and ongoing legacy of colonialism. Additionally, I acknowledge this as a point of reflection for all of us as we work towards dismantling colonial practices. Do you like Buried on the Tundra and want to make your own podcast? Let me tell you about Anchor. It's 100% free, has lots of tools to record and edit your podcast from anywhere, on your phone, iPad, tablet, or even your computer. Now you can even add songs from Spotify into your episodes. Anchor will distribute your podcast to all the big platforms, so you are instantly on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. You can even make money with no minimum listenership. A one-stop shop to make a podcast. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Today we're going to travel back in time to 1928, which is 31 years prior to Alaska becoming the 49th state. This is around the time of Klutuk. And the location we're going to talk about is the Holitna River. The Holitna River is 110 miles long. It is a tributary to the Kuskokwim River. And it is located east of the Kuskokwim Mountains and about a mile and a half south of Sleepmute is where the mouth begins. A random fact is that there was actually an Operation Holitna done by the federal investigations, and it was called that because they were looking into child porn, and there were many contributors to that. So they found that it was a good metaphor for their investigation. On November 15th, 1928, Constantine Beaver shot his friend Ignati Nekata, a young native man in a whitefish village on the Holitna River. From what was reported, the two were fighting and were intoxicated. The case was reported to the United States Commissioner Hoffman at Napamute on December 2nd. In the Anchorage Daily News, it was reported from Bethel that on December 21st, Deputy United States Marshal Wiseman captured Constantine in a trapper's cabin on the Holitna River. Wiseman was traveling by dog sled, and he captured two more criminals on the way back to Bethel. Constantine was then transported by plane to Fairbanks to be tried. Constantine and all of the eyewitnesses did not speak English, so a translator was used during the trial. Constantine was also appointed an attorney who was given 1 week to prepare for the trial. His attorney did attempt to delay the trial to get more time to prepare, and his delay was denied. On February 24th, 1929, the jury found Constantine guilty of murder. The jurors had selected to use a silent ballot for the penalty of the crime, which then led to the decision of Constantine's fate to fall on the judge's shoulders. Judge Cecil H. Clegg sentenced Constantine to death by public hanging. A week after Constantine's sentence, 3 jurors filed statements saying the punishment was too harsh and they wanted him to get life imprisonment instead. Their request was also denied because it was 3 days past the due date. Because Alaska wasn't a state at the time, Constantine had to petition the then President Herbert Hoover for clemency and a life sentence. President Hoover denied Constantine's request. On September 7th, 1929, the 32-year-old Constantine was hung in Fairbanks, Alaska, outside the old courthouse. Constantine's hanging was botched because the rope wasn't long enough, which caused him to strangle himself to death and took him 9 minutes to die. Not much is known about Constantine Beaver. He was an Alaskan native hailing from what was known as Kuskokwim country at the time. He was considered a woodsman. He was reported to be 32 years old when he was executed. You can find case pictures, source materials, and a case map showing you the locations of each of the villages I've talked about. Go to buriedonthetundra.com. You can follow me on Facebook at Buried on the Tundra. You can also follow me on Instagram at Buried on the Tundra Podcast. Like, subscribe, review the podcast on whatever platform you're using. Next week, we're going to travel to Gweithluck and look at a case about a man who strangled his girlfriend, was arrested, and then escaped custody. If you'd like to suggest a case, please send an email to buriedonthetundra@gmail.com. Warmest wishes from the coldest state.